Back, everyone, to the T.R.O.N podcast. This is your host, Rashad Woods. Today, I have a very special guest. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of speechless right now because she reached out to me, and I'm very honored that she did. Award-winning country music artist, producer, vocal coach, entrepreneur, Judy Rodman. Thank you so much.
I tell you what, the quality of your podcast, both the content and everything else, why would I not want to be on? So thank you for having me.
Oh, this first of all, thank you very much, and I'm very appreciative of that. I got to be honest with you, your history and what you've accomplished and what you're still accomplishing is amazing. And so your story started at, you started singing at 17, and you navigated all sorts of avenues of music. So please just give a little bio of how you became Judy Rodman, the country music superstar.
Well, in the arts, the trail is always a rabbit trail. And so what you have to do, and I didn't know it at first, of course, and it was very scary when I would hit dead ends. But what I've understood now, looking back, is that all the dead ends are just turning points.
Right.
So, I've been singing since I was actually 2, singing with my family, but professionally started at 17 doing jingles, and so I started doing jingles in Memphis. At the time, my company, the Tanner Company, was supposedly doing 75% of the world's jingles and ID packages. And we would sing from 8:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. And sometimes if we didn't get done, we would be singing till 5:30, and then we would be singing 5 days a week, and then sometimes Saturdays if we still didn't get done. So it was just a real factory, and there was no pitch fixing. This was in the early 70s. There was no fixing anything unless I did it myself. So, of course, I learned a ton, and I had no idea how much of that I would be using in future. But anyway, so I got sick. That was one of the walls I bounced off of. I thought was the dead end when my son was born. And I lost 1.5 octaves of my range after spending 3 months in the hospital and having an endotracheal tube down.
Wow, that's terrible.
So to make a long story short, 2 years later, I got my own voice back pretty much because I couldn't afford a vocal coach. I got it back with a little bit of remembering some training I had in college from one classical course, and then just feeling, just experimenting and getting my head voice. And I learned a ton about what damaged voices feel like and what it takes to get them back. So in the meantime, of course, my husband, who was a professional drummer at the company, I wasn't able to work, and we needed to make some money. So Nashville was calling, and a lot of the people that we knew had already moved to Nashville, a lot of the session people. So we took the grand leap and moved to Nashville. I started doing a bunch of sessions. I had been doing a lot of sessions in Memphis from country, like Charlie McLean and T.G. Shepherd, his early hits, and also worked for Willie Mitchell at Ardent for a lot of the high record people, high records. Yeah. And so it was just it was an amazing education. And then when I moved to Nashville, the session work was all over the place. There was background vocals on every album, and there were groups, and I knew enough to be able to plug into all those groups. I sort of innately was using what they call the Nashville number system already in Memphis, using Roman numerals like I learned as a pianist. And so I understood it pretty quickly and started doing all the top sessions in Nashville. And so then I got to do a session for Ed Bruce with Tommy West, who was Jim Croce's producer. And Jim had died in a plane accident. So Tommy was looking for someone else to take over and a new artist like he'd taken Jim Croce. And he I had started writing songs in Memphis, never thinking of myself as a songwriter, but I'd started writing songs. And so he liked the stuff I was writing, and he had something to prove. So he joined with Alan Stark from New York, and Howard Stark from New York, and Alan Bernard from LA, formed MTM Records, which was an offshoot of the Mary Tyler Moore. company.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was the first artist they signed.
That's
So,
amazing. I saw
yeah.
that. I read that on your website biography, and I thought that was amazing. And you started, really got signed at like 17, right?
No, at 17 I'd started doing jingles. I was
I
in
apologize. Okay.
I was in my by the time, I'd had years and years of
Mhm.
professional vocal work by then.
Yeah.
But I was in my mid 20s, late 20s when I
Right.
signed with MTM.
Okay. Okay. Got my
So,
timeline confused.
yeah.
Apologies.
Yeah. And there's something pretty cool. It's a pretty cool part of the story. I got on the road. I had a #1 record. I won the Academy of Country Music New Female Vocalist Award. And it looked
Yeah,
like, that story was going to keep on going, right?
for sure.
One of the shows I got to do was I opened for Reba in Memphis at Mud Island. And
Unbelievable.
backstage received a big bouquet of flowers from my old surgeon, one of my old surgeons that had seen
Wonderful.
me through 3 months in the hospital and tons of surgery. Yeah.
Right.
So, and I'd gotten most of my voice back, and then I got with a professional coach named Gerald Arthur and
Mhm.
got more than I'd ever had back. So then I learned the power of really professional vocal coaching to get
Right.
all of a damaged voice back. And, had #1 records. I thought I was going to keep on going forever. But then out of the blue, MTM got bought by BMG, which is a German company, and they decided they didn't want the
Right.
record label. So overnight, it disappeared, and so did I.
Mhm.
Another brick wall.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And
And
so,
it's crazy.
I mean, unfortunately, you hear about those things that happen all the time, but you looks like you pivoted really well in your career because obviously, so how did you get into producing, songwriting, and vocal coaching? And it's interesting because for the average person, losing their voice is even like, a traumatic experience, but for your profession, right? I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't even begin to imagine. I mean, that is your tool. I mean, it's like losing your writing hand, So how did you navigate such a traumatic experience?
It's funny that you say that because, I told my surgeon that I'd lost that much of my voice. And he looked at me and all he could say is, well, you're alive. I saved your life. And I looked at him and I didn't say it, but I was thinking, what life?
Right, right,
This is my
right.
life. But I had a newborn
Absolutely.
baby, I had a husband, I had a family. And I didn't really, I had to either give up or just pull myself up and try something. So I started doing
Right.
these Italian art songs of all things at my piano
Beautiful.
and got my voice back.
Wonderful.
So I hit the wall when the artist thing fell through. I mean, I was
Mhm.
on People Magazine. I was in Austin City Limits. I was on the Tonight Show.
I was
It's
I was
like,
seeing some of the YouTube clips. It's insane.
the thing is, there's something worse than never making it, I think, making it, quote
Okay.
unquote. And that
Yeah.
is making it and losing it. And
Oh,
then you feel like a has-been that never quite was. So
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
really depressed, and everything. And I thought, okay, what can I do? Well, I
Yeah.
had been writing songs for MTM, and some of my albums had about half of them were my songs, or about a half of them. But so I leaned into songwriting
Right.
and got signed by Warner Chappell, and got with a old friend of mine that I'd had named Dave Loggins, and he was out in LA when I won the ACM award. He's just an old buddy. I did a bunch of the demos with him on his stuff, and if
Mhm.
you look up Dave Loggins, you'll see what an incredible writer he was. He was a mentor. So
That's
anyway,
fantastic.
he signed me. Let me back up. I got signed with Warner Chappell, and
Mhm.
then I had a #1 record, which I didn't want to pitch to someone else because I wanted to use it
You
to
wanted to
get
get for
back on the
yourself.
road myself. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
it got pitched out from under me
Oh,
to Chuck Howard, who was a producer with this no-name 13-year-old named LeAnn Rimes on Curb Records, who had never broken a new act that I knew of. So I'm like, okay, goodbye to that song.
yeah.
So anyway, long story short, it became a huge #1, her,
Wow.
#1 song.
That's
And
unbelievable.
then I sent flowers to the guy that pitched it to Chuck Howard. You got to let your babies go.
That's crazy. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, like, oh, Unknown 13. I remember, like, I'm 42, and I remember when she first came out, right?
Yeah.
And, like, I want to say kind of, obviously I've seen her career progress, right? And you're like weird because you saw her when she first came out as this teen prodigy.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden she's this global superstar. So,
right. Right.
One question. Go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so, like, how does the songwriting process go? So I can't hold a musical note to save my life. My daughter, my oldest daughter in particular, is into music. So how does the song, writing process? Is collaboration? Is it singular? How does crafting the song actually work?
All of the above. It's an art, not a science. I had never read a book on songwriting or taken a course on songwriting. But here's what I did, and this is what I recommend too. And if you do want to get some mentoring or look at books or courses, I highly recommend a guy named Jason Bloom, Blume, I think. But anyway, I had never done that. What I did to learn it was I was dissecting songs. And back in Memphis also, I was in a cover band. That's how I met my husband. And we were doing everything from Brazil 66 and Fifth Dimension to Chaka Khan and James Taylor, Carole King and all that. We just covered all that stuff. Well, I did some of the charting for us. And what I did was, to learn it, I had to dissect what was going on in those records. And that was another incredible organic learning experience. And I did it for 7 years,
Right.
So I knew a lot more about songwriting than I thought I did. And so here's the bottom line. And I teach songwriting. I mentor songwriting with the artists that I work with too, my vocal students and my production clients. But you start, the most important thing is having an idea that's worth writing about.
Got it. That's fascinating. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm just putting it in my head because I can't sing, but this is how I created this podcast, right? So it was like, I can segue that into an idea, right? So, like, in my mind, it's like, now that it's compelling, it starts to come from the heart rather than something that I'm just going to make something and hope it's successful, because there's a difference between the two. There's a massive difference between the two.
Right. And, it's always great to write from your personal experience. But if you can't write from your personal experience about something, you can body snatch a friend or go to the airport and do some people watching and body snatch what you think their story might be. And if you can go there, you can go there as a human being. And, that empathy that we that's where we get our creativity from.
For sure.
We kind of extend ourselves to another person's situation.
Right.
And then you don't have to, there's a difference between the truth and facts, and not in a bad way, like is going on a lot in the in the world, but in this way.
Sure.
Truth is an idea, and you could be writing a parable about it, or a short story or something based on truth. And that's the best way to write songs, where you're not limited by the exact thing that happened.
Right.
In fact, I wrote a song called She Thinks That She'll Marry, But She Never Will, which became a Billboard top 10. And it was written about my best friend who was dating a big country star that was married. And I was really worried about her because I didn't think it was going to go anywhere.
Of course.
I wrote her out of it. I wrote this song where she was the victor in the end, and she did let it go. But, he thinks that she'll marry, but she never will.
Right.
Whereas the real story is she didn't marry that guy. And then the guy she did marry, I was going to write another song called She Finally Got Married and Wish She Hadn't.
Oh, no.
So you write from truth, and you write from circumstances. And then, I've started songs with a riff. Sometimes the song lyrics are in my fingertips. I'm primarily keyboard based, although I have written on guitar. And you ask yourself, what does that sound of the instrument saying?
Wow.
And then I've written from one line. I got one line from a guy. You write from that, and the one line didn't end up being the title, but it's where the story started.
Got it.
And then One Way Ticket, Because I Can, was actually called Because I Can, and the label wanted to rename it One Way Ticket, so we compromised on One Way Ticket.
Kind of maneuvered that, navigated.
Yeah, I was thinking One Way Ticket, that sounds kind of fatal, yeah, whatever. But so I wrote that, with Keith Hinton, my co-writer. We were having lunch across the street from Warner Chapel. And so at the, it was getting late, and I said, well, let's go back to the studio. They had a little studio there. And I said, let's go back to Warner Chapel because we can. And so Keith said, we should write that. And I thought, yeah, we should. And so I got home and turned it into Because I Can, called him, and the rest is history. Yeah.
Beautiful. So here's a question I asked. You've navigated all these years of music, and obviously we're going to get to your vocal coach career. How does artificial intelligence factor into songwriting now, right? Because what's your perspective, good, bad, and different? I just need to know.
I am very active on ChatGPT. I'm following Denise Wakeman and Andy O'Brien's work with humanizing AI. I remember the time the Moog, that's a synthesizer, came out for the first time. The synthesizer, like a Kurzweil, I think, is somebody bought back in Memphis. And I remember all the players, the horn players, the string players, freaking out because, oh my God, they're going to steal our work. We're never going to. Why should we even take instrument lessons? My whole life is over. But the smart ones bought their own synthesizers because they could program it the best. And then there's nothing like the real thing, but they could use it when the budget that someone had, they couldn't afford, real players or real in the session. So the smart ones of us are going to realize those AI worms are not going back in the can. So we need to learn how to use it to help us, like our assistant, without AI taking over. Like the problem on streaming now is there's fake artists and fake songs. And guess what? They don't touch the human heart. I mean, they get the algorithm and they manipulate, the algorithm so that they get streams and everything, but nobody's going to remember their lives by them.
It's very interesting too, because obviously there's other pratfalls with that. You start getting into royalties, you start getting into copyrights, you start getting into all the businesses and not just the entertainment aspect of it all, right? And to the degree, like even I've used ChatGPT, right? Because I think that in order to write a more succinct bio, it cleans up what I've typed up, right? Like if I wanted to, when I do my website and do my blogs, at the same time, I'll look at it and I'll say, that's not really what I wanted to say. It didn't say it in the right manner that I wanted to actually describe because it didn't come from me. And it can be, you can get lazy using that. You can do it once or twice, but then it doesn't feel organic, or you can, for lack of a better term, using that sort of software platform.
You're speaking my language.
You really can.
When it comes to AI, trust but verify. Let me tell you a story that illustrates that point. I'm a podcaster as well. I have a podcast called All Things Vocal, right? And from the beginning, I've always written my own posts and my own stuff. But lately, I've enlisted the help of ChatGPT as an assistant.
Yes.
So anyway, I ran into a situation where I recommend pineapple juice. And I'll tell your listeners right now, if you have vocal issues like dry throat, phlegmy throat, whatever, diluted pineapple juice won't add to acid reflux. And if you're not allergic to it, you should try diluted pineapple juice to sip during your vocal performances or your speaking, when you have to speak a lot. But anyway, I had a student that got a respiratory illness and lost her voice from that, but went to a laryngologist who said, oh my gosh, it's the pineapple juice your vocal coach has been telling you to drink in the studio. And it freaked me out. So I'm like, what?
Exactly.
So, by the way, later they totally admitted it was not the pineapple juice. It was just the infection, the respiratory infection. But it triggered me to go online, and you know how those AI snippets are coming up in
all the
Google
time,
now, right?
All the time.
Okay, so I put in the query, is pineapple juice dangerous for the voice? And what it came up with is, yes, it is. Unfortunately, adds to acid reflux, and singers will do well not to drink it. And I'm freaking out because I've got decades of history with it and recommending it. And I've got acid reflux and have no problem with the diluted juice. So AI, trust but verify.
Absolutely.
So I enlisted ChatGPT to give me some online studies of why the bromelain enzyme in pineapple actually helps the voice. And it did. And so I notated,
Perfect.
and I'm just about ready to publish that episode, but
Wonderful.
this is something you probably don't know. If you do, you're one of very few that I know. In writing it and enlisting ChatGPT's help to do it and research it, now when you go on Google and you ask that same question, is pineapple juice dangerous for the voice? It changes its answer.
Nice.
And one of the places it cites is me
Is you
talking about it on Reddit.
Right.
So
that's how deep.
That's the thing.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's always running. It's always got something different facts.
Even when you haven't published it, even when you haven't published yet.
That's amazing. And, so just to, obviously I want to talk about your vocal coaching and things, because I thought that was a fascinating thing as well too. But just briefly, how has the internet and digital changed the way artists are located, found, and seeking and finding talent now? Right. Obviously it's a lot more wider pool, but does that dilute kind of the talent, so to speak, when people don't necessarily have to sing in front of a vocal coach, or they can do something on YouTube or TikTok? What's your feeling on that?
The thing that never changed is that the more people that see you creates visibility for you and what you do, the better. Okay. So in that way, the internet has allowed a global reach where there was only a local reach.
Correct.
Paradoxically, it allows many more people to jump on the train and try to get visible.
One question.
But if you are good and you train to be even better and you make excellence, your goal in everything that you do, you will stand out of the crowd. And so in that way, I don't fear the internet with the artist thing. The more unfortunate thing is what's going on with streaming, stealing songwriters' pay.
Oh my goodness.
And again, it's not going to go backwards. So we have to figure out what to do as artists and as songwriters to make a living, given the facts as they are. And you do want to look at legislation and make sure you try to make sure that AI created stuff is not copyrightable and things like that you can do. Yeah.
Right. So, and the thing is about it is, I'm just a consumer, right? But I always appreciate what artists do and the work that they put out. But, I was there when tapes came out. Then next, you're walking around with your CD player, and that's the big deal. And then all of a sudden, Napster hit, and here you are as a fan, this is the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And then you have Metallica and everybody and Dr. Dre, I'm ready to kill somebody. Right? And you're but here you are, just happy that you have all this access, not knowing the business and the work that was involved to get that music out to people. And so now, the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak. Now you have cars that don't even have CD players in them, right? And now you
exactly. Or in laptops that don't have CD players.
In laptops. But you want to make sure people are compensated rightfully for the work that they're putting out in songwriting credit, which, I'm sure you're getting information and data every single day, because you're right at the forefront of it. So I hope that
it's always changing. It's going to keep changing, and we have to figure out the business model that works. Instead of whining about it, we have to face the reality of it. And then I love your other guest's idea of stoic empathy, and be loving and empathetic, but realize also having your feet on the ground and knowing what it is going on, and then doing what you can. But here's the thing about the arts, and music, of course, is part of the arts. Don't go into it unless you can't not.
Right.
Professionally. In other words, you're driven to it. It's in there, and it's got to come out. Then, if you don't do it, there'll be a big hole in your soul if you don't do it. So create, and then sometimes things catch fire, like One Way Ticket. Sometimes things catch fire. And sometimes things don't, but sometimes things catch fire decades later that you wrote. So my mantra is, whatever it is that you're doing, go for excellence.
Questionably.
And look for the open windows.
Without question.
Where people that would like that or need that thing that you're creating can find it.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. And every time, even though I can't sing or play an instrument to save my life, I always think about, again, to parallel back to the podcast, right? It takes a little bit of a singer/artist in you to put this out, right?
Oh, yes.
Right. And there's a fear of my voice. And I was listening to your podcast when you talk about opening up your diaphragm and speaking properly and breath control, right? And so even when I'm talking, and I did now earlier, I would find myself getting out of breath, talking earlier episodes, because it's a lot harder than people think that it is when you don't know how to pause and have structure, sentences, and commas. It's easy to write commas. It's hard to to actually speak with a pause.
Right.
And so it trains you, and it makes for a poor experience when you're okay. I got to stop. I got to pause and catch my breath. And you're like, oh
Yeah.
man, this sounds terrible. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of parallels, and that's why one of the things I want to segue to was your vocal coach career, because I thought that was amazing that you're a vocal coach now, not just for singers and songwriters, but also for public speaking. So
Right.
when you navigated to that field of work, what was that experience, that segue into your career like?
Well, again, it was because my songwriting career hit a brick wall. I mean, they weren't cutting my songs, whether they just weren't cutting my songs. The songwriting style changed, and
For sure.
it just happened. I sort of think we're not alone in the world, and I feel like that was a plan.
It's-
It was
right.
like an evil plan at the time, but I couldn't go on, so I had to pivot. And I
Right.
decided, okay, I'll do organic gardening. I can make organic garden plans. Or this girl named Carol Chase was singing with Leonard Skinner, and she was an old friend of mine. She was an old friend of mine. We had done a lot of sessions together, and she knew I knew stuff. She knew I knew how to suggest things that would help her sing the way I wanted her to for a particular thing when I was leading the group. So she came to me one day when she first started the tour and said she was having trouble reaching one of these high notes. Could I help her? And I looked at her like, well, why do you think I know?
Right.
But I didn't say that. And I made a suggestion, and it worked.
Right.
So when I hit the wall as a songwriter, I thought, okay, maybe I can coach voices. So I put an ad in the paper for vocal coaching and one for organic garden design. And guess which one got called? Vocal coaching. So I didn't have any vocal coaching degree. I mean, I'd taken music in college and all that, but what I had at that point was decades of experience, all of that stuff. And I knew, just like songwriting, decades of experience dissecting songs. So I was working not only with my own voice, but directing other voices through the years in session work. And anyway, so I was successful. I was able to help people. So I got curious, and then I dug into everybody's systems. I asked doctors, chiropractors,
Right. The human
Alexander
anatomy,
Technique,
yeah.
practitioners. I took lessons from him, and I just learned why, when I did something that worked, why it was working. That way I could do it on purpose rather than by accident. Because that's what a lot of people, that speak well or sing well at first, they run into maybe a respiratory illness or something, and it makes them push or try too hard. And then it gets worse. And what do they do about that? Well, they just push or try too hard even more.
Right. Right.
So the thing is, it's easy to do, but it's also easy to correct.
Right.
So for instance, I'm using this SM7B here, broadcast mic. If I move away from it like this and it's forward, you can hear my voice thin right now, and I'm going to have a little bit more vocal fry. But if I move my feet in or my butt in, if I was sitting, then it makes my head balance over my heel instead of the balls of my feet, right? Or my tailbone if I'm sitting. And that immediately opens my throat and opens my rib cage, which is where the diaphragm is connected. And that needs to widen so that you have a lid on your compression engine, which is your breath engine, and that your diaphragm is wide. Well, if you just change your posture, if you just balance your head farther back without lifting your chin, you've opened your throat and you've given yourself breath control.
It's so funny you say that, because I saw that on your Instagram and I was like, you know what? Because I have a tendency, you don't even when you take a picture, you're raising your head like I do. I'm notorious for it.
Yeah.
I looked at old pictures of myself. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? This is awful, right? And so I was watching that, and I said, you can notice you're less out of breath when you actually are structured and you're open up. And it sounds like a cliche because your parents always tell you, sit up, son, sit up.
Right.
And you're like, what do you mean? Don't slouch. And it's like, it really does matter. And that's one of the things I saw when I was going on your Instagram, page, because you're giving all these tips and insights, and it probably helps that mucus from even sitting in your lungs after a while, I imagine.
Oh, it opens everything. Yeah, at first it brings the mucus up, so you have to get rid of it. But
exactly.
that's where pineapple juice can help.
Right.
Try have people listening and watching out there. If you lift your chin, notice what happens in your rib cage. Your rib cage tightens.
Yes.
That means your diaphragm is too much slack in it, has too much slack in it, and it can move too much air. You don't have control of air. You don't have control of your voice. You don't have enough air because you're losing too much of it. But if you rock your head down and pull back, cocky like that,
Mm-hmm.
you'll notice your rib cage opens,
Yeah.
your ears even open, your throat opens, which you're going to have more resonance in your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, it brings up frogs if you haven't. And you also have control over your breath. Right.
What are the common, because I could pick your brain all day because this is I'm so honored that you came
So
on.
much fun.
What are the common mistakes that people make who come out, who want to sing and have, they're told, either in church or their inner circle, hey, you have a really good voice, but there's more to singing than just being able to have a good voice and hold a good note.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
it's like sports. Like, I mean, everybody is athletic at a certain point, right? It just becomes the nuances of how that's utilized. So what area do people who can sing navigate to actual being a good performer, songwriter, producer? Because it can't just be, I can hit a note, so to speak.
Right. Well, the most common physical mistake people make is using too much air to create volume.
Okay.
Volume should come from resonation.
Okay.
So if I go you make me, see, that's kind of tight, right?
Right.
You make me feel like a natural. So that's really, really open.
Yeah.
I'm pulling. I call it pulling instead of pushing for power. So that's the number one mistake that you physically make. And the way you fix it, it has a lot to do with posture and rocking your head down as you pull back. The even more important mistake that I see people make is because of hidden voices in our heads that say your goal should be to sing or speak well. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. What is that? It's like getting on a horse and looking down and going, okay, horse, move well. It's going to buck you off and go to the barn.
Oh my gosh.
No, this thing in our neck is only there for one reason. It's to deliver messages.
Right.
And not only that, but to deliver messages to the one heart.
Right.
And that can be a specific heart. What heart? The heart, the lyric, or your speech. The heart, the lyric is to, not necessarily the audience.
Right.
It could be to yourself, could be to God, could be to the one heart of the venue.
For sure.
I teach professors and ministers and teachers, and sometimes if they feel like they're not reaching their class, it's because they're trying to do the flashlight thing, which is like talk to everybody at once, instead of the laser beam thing, which is talk to the one, and then move the one over here.
Right.
And that's an instant stage presence creator, by the way.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So, even when we're doing podcasts, like I'm talking to this camera here, you are down there.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, like, there's times like, because the screen is over here, so it's easy to look at the person over here. And then you're like, dude, stare straight ahead. Right. And you're like, I was looking at tips of how to do this podcast. And it's like, it's very easy to see the person on the screen and you're going like this. It's like, dude, what are you looking at? Right. You have to stare straight ahead. And there's subtle nuances, and the creativity of it all is, I think the most beautiful part about songwriting and listening is we get to just be the listener of the final product. So we don't get the chance to see how things came, from the farm to the butcher shop to the grocery shelf, so to speak.
Right.
So here I am just turning on my Sirius XM radio or my Pandora or YouTube. And I'm like, dude, this is just, I'm having a great time. And you're like, yeah, but you don't realize what it really took to get that song out.
It's just, if you focus on the one, whoops, I think I might have turned it off. Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. Yep,
okay, good. If you focus on the one, it changes how your voice acts. Say, if I go, don't do that again, like I'm talking to a little kid, of course he's going to do it again. If I go, don't do that again.
Right.
It's liable not to do it again.
Absolutely.
So I have to be careful how I talk to my little puppy. He's listening to my tone of voice more than my words.
Right.
But everybody is. It's acting technique, but real acting, as Sanford Meisner says, is behaving authentically in fictional circumstances. So you have to get real. And then the listeners are gravy. Yeah. The Grammy Awards are gravy.
Right.
The real goal should be not only to communicate to one heart, but to get that heart to respond.
Absolutely.
With facial or body language that says they got what you're saying. You're making them feel what you wanted to. So you have to use your imagination. If if they're not really there,
Right.
which is most of the time. Well, it's acting technique, but it's
Right.
being authentic and being real within that circumstance or that song.
Well, I think it's funny too because I have to broadcast, and be on this podcast. 5 people could watch it, but that doesn't mean I can pack it in. Right? Like it could be 5, or it could be 500, it could be
Right.
5,000 people.
Right.
So your performance still has to speak for itself. You have to have a compelling message. You have to have compelling questions to ask. You have to have a good rapport with the person that you're talking to, and it's irrespective of the level of audience that's listening. And so it goes both ways. And I think that, part of the reason I think you and I have had a good vibes back and forth is we both have a compelling story and we both understand much more than me, right? That authenticity is the key to being successful in your field,
And the key to a prosperous journey yourself,
Exactly.
which has a lot more to do than any award that you could get, but like feeling that you've been of value in the world, which that's how you're valuable. Yeah.
No question. And like I said, I think that you have, a biography that I can't even summarize in a 35, 40-minute interview because when I went down the wormhole, I'm like, when people have Wikipedia pages, it pauses me in my tracks because I don't deserve to talk to these people, right?
Scary though, because you don't write those Wikipedia pages, and I'm like,
well, yeah, that's true. That's very true. But still, it's one of those things that you are definitely very grateful for, and I would love to have a follow-up interview with you because I think that
there's so much we could talk about, even more. Yeah, I'm not done yet. I've got musical theater stuff going on.
Yeah,
and I think I wake up every morning thinking, what can I get into today?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you got the greatest profession in the world. So just briefly, people like you are well accomplished, but I love always when people to answer the question of where's Judy Rodman? How can people find her? Like that they need me.
www.judyrodman.com. That will take you everywhere you need to go. And while you're there, you should pick up a freebie that I offer that's good for anybody that uses their voice for anything. And it's like 9 pages of vocal health tips. So just, get that. You'll see that on my site. But you can connect with me there. You can contact me there. You can check out a lot of, as you alluded to, I've got a lot of free vocal lessons in the form of YouTube videos.
Yeah.
There's a link to that, and there's a link to my courses and everything else. But yeah, judyrodman.com.
I think that, your accomplishments speak for themselves. I can't wait to have a follow-up interview with you. And like I said, 5 decades of songwriting, vocal coaching, and multiple awards, and the skies continue to be the limit. And I am honored that you absolutely carved out a little bit of time in your busy schedule to be on the T.R.O.N podcast.
Thank you. You are too kind. And congratulations on this thing that you've created. I really enjoy it, and I look forward to following you.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor and pleasure. Thank you, Judy Rodman.
You got it. Thanks.
But I had a blast.
Okay, me too.
I had an absolute, I thought that was a lot of fun, and I got to be honest with you, like I said, I was